Hello everyone, welcome back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing absolutely awesome. It's Monday, we've had footy over the weekend, so if you're new around here, make sure you drop a like, drop a subscribe. I've got a load of you coming from other football clubs, so that's really good because I just love the footy conversation and it's great to see you all. So we're well on our road, we're trying to get to 10,000. We've set ourselves a ridiculous aim by the end of the year, but I think between us, we can do it. So probably going to have to come up with a pseudonym for you guys, Pommy and Oz's. I like that. Pozzers? Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. We are doing a giveaway next week on the 4th, Guernsey of your choice, members only stream. If you want to become a member, click the link in the description. It's a couple of bucks a month, and yeah, we'll give away a Guernsey of your choice. So let me know what you're thinking. So we're going to do some reviews of the practice games, some just basic ones in case you missed it or in case you've got your eye on some opposition. I thought we'd have a look at it, and we start off with the reigning premiers, the Cats versus the Hawks. Now, this was a 4-time, 30-minute quarter jobby, no time on. So it was a very, like, big time. It was like probably as close as you'd get to proper AFL in the length of times. And apart from probably the opening 10, 15 minutes exchange where the Hawks did look really good, the Cats kind of cruised into this one. Now, there's a caveat with all these reviews. It is pre-season. It is their first practice game. So I don't want the Hawks fans. I'm not jumping off the Hawks either. I thought they showed signs. I thought J Newcombe looked absolutely devastating, to be honest. He looked really solid. I'd love to see some more from Warple in this. But the young guys, Josh Ward and Will Day, we know Will Day's had his injuries and he's coming now into the go time in the career. He looked really impressive, some real good energy and some real zip about him. And Josh Ward, the same. Hawks, you can see what they're trying to do. Now, I don't think either side could be guilty of going 120%. It's the first week of scratch matches, per se, versus opposition. I always say there's like the 3 tiers. There's the ratified ones where stats are calculated, which is this week coming. There's these ones, which are the second tier. And then the third tier where we don't take any notice of is Interclub, because obviously you know what's coming. But the Hawks, you know, energy levels wise, they were all right. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, I think Mitch Lewis did stand out not being there in the terms of having some kind of direction in that forward line. It's going to be interesting what they do. Hustwaite had his moments as well. Looks really robust and looks like he enjoys it. Finn McGuinness, I did like his game as well. For parts of it. As for Geelong, Tanner pretty much dominated around the ball in the terms of time there. He fits straight in. He really looks a sort, and I think you're going to see something that you didn't see at GWS. Captain Danger, he was just danger. But like I say, these guys never really got out of second gear. I did like seeing Bowes, though. He's very versatile. He's going to be plug and play for the Cats. And I think that deal for Jai Clark is going to look better. Jai Clark, you saw how he keeps his width and his running was definitely paramount. It's going to be interesting, though, because honestly, like I say, the Hawks didn't really pressure the Cats. And I'd imagine if there was 4 points on the line, we would have seen a total different Hawks as well. But Geelong went out winners there, 2012 for 138, playing 7-11-53. And yeah, the Cats, if they can maintain that, I don't think they'll be 4 gears away from everyone else there. But very impressive performance nonetheless that they did it. And then we went up to Essendon. They hosted, they played Gold Coast and at the Carruthers Oval, and it was horrible kicking conditions, it has to be said. Essendon winning 11-14-80 versus 11-9-75. Gold Coast, so just a 5-point win. And as we say there, pressure tells us Bomber prevails. The pressure from the forward half of the Bombers was unlike the Bombers. The Bombers have had them question marks of are they up for the physicality. In this game, they did. There has to be a caveat, though. There was no Tuck Miller, which I think will be absolutely paramount to what they do. But Bailey Humphrey really did stand out for me, really showed his willingness to fight, his willingness to, you know, get involved. And his physicality is really impressive. Do you know what I mean? For someone so young. Flanders had his moments as well. I did like the Matt Rowell and Anderson combination. Alex Davies did his chances of around one birth no harm as well. Incredibly versatile player. They did look just behind the 8 ball, but let's talk about the guys at Essendon, which pains me to say it, but Will Setterfield really brought some robust, some physicality to the contest. We know as Carlton fans that when he was on the ball, that was probably his best position. And you really did see that. And the way he linked up with Parrish and Merritt will definitely be something that, you know, the Bombers fans will take into this season. A lot of people are really negative on the Bombers. This was like one of them 5 times 25-minute quarters, so they played the extra. Definitely, you could see that time towards the end. A lot of the players were shelved in that. But Essendon did see a little bit more clustered as well. They looked to move the ball a little bit more faster, but definitely in defending transition, they looked a lot more rigid. And that was my big issue with Essendon last year. I felt like they didn't quite look up to the fight. Gold Coast, would I panic? They'll definitely be in and around that top 10, I think. Tucker Miller's a huge out for them. Anderson and Rowell did it. I did feel like they lacked foot speed in the middle at times. Connor Blakely did his best, but like, you know, Swallow, Blakely, they're not Tucker Miller. Do you know what I mean? And Anderson and Rowell, though, did stand up to a very experienced midfield. You've got to remember that Essendon midfield is schmick. But Jai Menzies, definitely someone to keep an eye out for. We've had Hugh Raps on him in this channel. Took his goals well, but the pressure was telling. They didn't let them halfbacks. And Ben Long, he was the new recruit there at Gold Coast. He had his moments as well, looking out there. It'd be interesting to see what they do with the tall forwards at Gold Coast, because I feel like that is an issue for me. I don't quite trust Casbolt and etc. to complement King, to be honest, and that's going to be interesting. But the smalls at Gold Coast are going to be dangerous, so look out for them. But honestly, no Tuck Miller. It's hard to say. I reckon Tuck Miller would have been the difference maker there. Then we went to probably the surprise of the round. This is why practice matches, you're looking at application, because if you look at application here, Richmond were by far the better side, and that's not a knock on North, because you can only beat what's in front of you. But Richmond were in gear 2 the whole way, and I felt they had the better of the clinches, bar the scoreboard, which is the most important glitch, let's be honest. But I thought Taranto and Hopper did combine brilliantly. You can see that synergy there. It looks there. There was maybe some disappointments because I don't think Bolton and Bolton, Graham, Baker, a few others didn't play, so that was the big thing. But definitely that Taranto Hopper Prestia around the ball is going to be really tough. And then when you float Shy Bolton through there with them 3 ball winners, that is going to be something that is very dangerous and something that I've got my eye out for round 1. Credit to North, though, the fight back is big. Do you know what I mean? The fight back was big because they were dominant. And, like, you know, Tim Taranto went crazy when he slotted across half forward, snagging goals, also dominant on the ball. They were very rigid. And they were up for the fight. LDU looked really good. Cam Zerhart coming into the ball looked really good. Phillips, Powell, who the North fans are slating me for not having in. I can see why you have him in your best 22. He was very solid. And Paul Curtis, we've mentioned him a lot in his draft year. He looked a real difference maker. No Simkin as Cunnington as well for them as well. You've got to remember that. So that's a big thing. But they did look classy, Richmond. I will say what North, that told me, is they're going to be a very grindy side. I reckon if you don't put them away early, as this game showed, I think you're foobarred, to be honest, because I think Clarkson has made them very rigid and very tough to break down. Thompson Dow in his 1 quarter looked good. I know he's working his way into his fitness. I was a big fan of Thompson Dow's game in here as well. But very interesting, this game. It was a very interesting game. It's a game that I don't want North fans to get their hopes up. I thought there was a lot there, but Richmond shouldn't shelve it. They're a dangerous side. They were literally in gear 2 all the way and did have the better of the clinches. Then we had Brisbane, Sydney. This is an exciting game. It was a very lackluster Sydney. A lot of players missing, let's be honest. a lot of players missing. Do you know what I mean? Berry was pure on the wing, though, for Brisbane. No Zorko for them. It was interesting, but there was half a side out for Sydney, let's be honest, and they really weird chop and change. Errol Goulding, though, will be one that they'll look at and go, you know what, he's on the ball time. He was pretty much their main on-baller. Looked really solid. Cal Mills had his moments as well, playing a little bit more ahead of the ball as well. You can see Sydney were really trying to work that rotation, and this was really Brisbane versus Sydney's heavily rotated midfield. Isaac Heaney did some nice things as well in his time there. Luke Parker and Rowbottom and Warner definitely look like they've put on a bit of size and look like they're going. Brisbane, Lockie Neal, he was shelved after the third quarter, but he was class. Dunkley, though, adds that layer, and this is why I'm quite bullish on Brisbane. I think Dunkley, him floating through half forward and on the ball, looked really solid. And this was probably Brisbane's best 22, bar Zorko, to be honest. And you saw that they're really taking this serious. There was some really good moments as well of them looking to really play it quickly, shorter from down the back. I know Daniel Rich is that clearance specialist, which I felt made them come unstuck when they played in finals time. I thought it is a risk of giving it away. So you can see there's a real concerted effort on that. Dunkley adds that layer. Klug, most underrated footballer, we call him on this channel in the AFL. He had his moments as well. Will Ashcroft looks ready-made. They'll be happy with Will Ashcroft. He literally just dances around and has so much time. And seeing Gunston kick goals will be huge for Brisbane because he's definitely there and that point of difference. So that is going to be interesting. Other points, though, Cam Rayner playing halfback. Not too sure about this one. I'd love to know what Brisbane fans are. It didn't look bad, but I just think I understand it. Maybe it's an Adam Cherra type thing of getting him there with some time, but that'll be interesting. Sydney, though, do you know what I mean? I thought what they got out of this was their young players, particularly their young tolls, McAndrew and stuff. They held their own against a lot of fire. Do you know what I mean? Against their lot of fire. It was a very experienced Brisbane side, and that will hold them in good stead for their development as young, tall players. But then we come on to a game that we've talked quite a bit about on this channel because I am a Blue. Blues win in a tight affair. This was probably the 4 times 20 minutes with time on. So pretty much AFL rules. This was pretty much, I would say, very tightly contested. I wouldn't say it was AFL intensity, but I would say of the games, this was one of the more intense ones. Takeouts for Carlton definitely will be their new recruits, Akers, Cowan, Mr. Hollands really looked the part. Jesse Motlop looks sensational. Isaac Quaynor, I've got to say, looks probably the fittest I've ever seen him. And the kind of creamy boots with the man bun work for me as well. He looks really impressive. It was interesting because, you know, you could see both sides were working on something. Carlton were really trying to solidify that defensive transition, change their ball movement from the back half. Definitely had a layer. The fourth quarter was really an intriguing affair because Collingwood were going. Carlton were trying to take that time off the clock and spent much of it trying to take the time off the clock and learn to go through the gears. I think both sides got a lot out of this. Jamie Elliott, again, against Carlton, really nagging. I like Jack Crisp's game as well for Collingwood. Nick Dacos, do you know what I mean? For me, all over the place. And he looks better than he was last year, if possible. So that's going to be something that is intriguing for them. McStay, you can see why they've bought him. There's a lot talked about it. His movement, when you bring Mihocek into that side, I think that dual movement is going to be really, really hard because they're really hard to match up for them. And that's something that Mihocek doesn't get enough kudos. Ones to watch for Carlton, though, Jesse Motlop looks supremely fit. And I can't remember many second-year players that look like they've spent time in the gym. And Jesse Motlop looks ready-made, and he's put on a lot of size. Blakers looked really good, and you can see that defensive transition. He's going to be key to it, playing a winger in the defensive transition. And Matt Kennedy and George Hewitt proving why they are probably so integral to Carlton's system. Carlton's midfield works a lot better. Collingwood tried a lot of things. Tom Mitchell, It's going to take a while to get used to that game plan, but I heard them speak about him today. Clearances is something that they struggle with, and he's going to be there. I don't think Tom Mitchell was going at full ball, to be honest, and Carlton negated him very well. It'd be interesting to see, though, if there was 4 points on the line. Interesting enough, though, the goal he'd been floated through on the ball wasn't hugely impactful, but definitely something to keep an eye on, and I like that because I think he is potentially a game changer for them. Melbourne versus my wife's team, St Kilda, and boy, oh boy, did St Kilda get a lesson. 105-46, 6 25-minute quarters, but the seniors mainly played the first 3 or 4 quarters, and Demons looked like they made business. And I've got to say, the Demons went into this game with definitely a focus on intensity. They definitely were 2-3 bars over the intensity. Gawn and Grundy and Gawn, it's going to be an interesting one because I don't mind it. Do you know what I mean? And it seemed that Gawn was more the floater in the forward line and then resting back in defensive transition, which we know he does so well. But they did dominate, as you'd expect. You've got 2 of the best 3 ruckmen in the league. So it was interesting. Oliver and Tracker, as usual, linked up well. Viney doing Viney things. James Harms really impressed me as a little bit of a point of difference in the middle. I really enjoyed that, and I thought that's going to be something that I think he looks like he's going to have a really good year this year. Pickett, saw a lot more of him in the centre as well, and you can see that they're looking for that point of difference. They've kind of got Carlton's problem that they've got a lot of physical beasts. Do they have leg speed? And I don't buy into that, but you've got to manufacture it from somewhere. St Kilda, are they going to cry? Probably not, because there was a few players out. I will say this, though, right, that I watched them and I felt like they've got a lot of toll problems. That's going to be an issue, right? I just don't think that the roster boss, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. I've said this to my partner many times. I just don't think you can play football the Ross way in 2023. And I think you saw a progressive game plan. It's going to be interesting because I think he's got to add them key elements. And when I look at the players out, I don't think he can. Do want to reserve some time, though. Jack Steele pretty much nearly played every minute he was on the park. Looks super fit, worked hard. He's kind of got that Patrick Cripps 2018-2019 vibe. A lot is expected on him. Brad Crouch was an amiable companion for him. Windhager, though, looks supreme, and I'm looking forward to seeing his development and seeing they've got so many rotations off half-back, and they're trying to find that middle ground. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time on Matthias Philippou. He's my pick to win the Rising Star. What a player. Took his goal well. Loads talked about evidently some supposed arrogance. It's not arrogance when you're that good. Telling you, put the money in. He's $15 at the moment. What a player. Worked his way into it well. And I tell you what, that is where that forward line could come unlocked when they get everyone back. And it's going to be interesting to see. They're going to be hoping that them tolls work because they were trying everything. Like everyone played at full forward at one point, which isn't what they'll do when they get players back. So it's going to be interesting to see that. I do think it's going to be a long, hard road for St Kilda there, based on that, dependent if they get a lot of players back. 2 games left then. Adelaide versus a heavily changed and a heavily rotated Fremantle. Good start for him, to be fair, away from home. Sam Berry, what a player he is. He was really, really strong. And the way he links up with Laird and them guys rotating through, for me, is something for them to look forward to, because he is a real footballer, really tenacious. And Sloan coming back is going to make that. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Sloan played kind of all over the place, do you know what I mean, as well. It wasn't his traditional on-ball work. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do. But real nice movement patterns from them. They've got real good pace and physicality. So I really like to see what I saw there. They handled Fremantle really well. But you've got to remember that it's very... When you looked at Fremantle, they weren't really going into this. And it was a good test for O'Meara and Brodie, particularly versus this incredibly high pressure-based system. They are everywhere, aren't they? They are a foot ahead of everyone. Intense numbers when you look at their pressure magnets. But I did enjoy it. I like the rotations they've got, Adelaide. I think it's some points of difference there. Rochelle had some on ball time. So did Rankine. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting one. But Fremantle, they won't worry so much. They've got a few players, I think, that, will make points of difference. And I think when that comes into the game, they'll be a bit different. But some things to question, but Jago O'Meara and Will Brodie got a good test. And Nat 5 foot forward, I like it. I think that's going to be goals for them. And it's going to be interesting. And we finish with Eagles beat Port. Now, this is, again, practice games, 84-76. And it was a third quarter slurry from West Coast and Port. Don't know what Port were trying. They were definitely trying something in the third, which allowed them to come down and lose, really. Do you know what I mean? But they were definitely trying something. It felt like they were trying to keep ball retention, which the pressure ultimately of the young midfield really, really killed them a little bit. But Elliot Yeo looked really strong. I really did like Elijah Hewitt, Jai Cully, and Dom Sheed, though. And Dom Sheed looks to be the main go-to man for them. And I like that. I think that that's a really interesting role. Tim Kelly spent more time half forward than we usually see him, which I think is impressive. And do you know what I mean? Without their premier ruckman, do you know what I mean? Without Nick Natanui, they looked really solid. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see what West Coast Eagles do. I've been quite cold on them. This kind of makes me think, to be honest. It kind of makes me think. It'd be interesting, though, when that happens. Do you know what I mean? When that happens, when they actually go. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in game. It's always hard to say, but definitely West Coast, they'll take some pleasure in this because they did look all right. Their movement looked good. I like their youngsters running through. Shuey obviously needs to be in that team, which I think will add a different dimension. But they're young kids as well. Cully, he looked good from the mid-season. Hewitt, like I say, definitely looks a sorts. Really, really took his goal well and looks like he can really... I feel like I know there's been a lot of raps on him, but I just feel like in that side, he hasn't got much pressure because there's a lot of players to protect him. So you can see the turn of place. Port Adelaide, I don't think they'll be too disappointed here because they had no Dixon, which I think is huge for their structure and their system. And I don't think Marshall and Giordardis are ready to take that mantle yet. But they did well. Do you know what I mean? Because Eagles have some of the best defenders in the world. They really battled hard. They brought it to ground. Mr. Rioli, he got amongst the goals and he looked like he was going to thrive off it. And I thought when Dixon's there, they're going to be good. Jason Horn-Francis playing on half forward and in on the ball. He looked good. Connor Rosie, we've been big on him. He looks like he's ready. And, the rest of the guys there, Wines just did Wines things. And you've obviously got to add, Boak. Do you know what I mean? You've got to add Zach Butters. There's a few players out there in Dixon. It'll be a different thing, but really interesting just to see. I think West Coast needed that win. I think just to give them something. But that's the preseason wrap. How did your team go? Remember, it is a practice game. Don't get too upset or carried away. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes, but I will see you Wednesday. We'll finish off. We've got St Kilda and Sydney. And then we'll have the Doggies and Eagles at some time this week. Look after yourselves. See you Wednesday. Palm out.